All right, let's dive right into this explainer and bring some order to a seriously frantic, adrenaline-fueled montage of toys facing absolute impossible odds. When you're a miniature character navigating a giant human-sized world, literally every single day presents a massive, life-altering challenge. But the moments that truly define these characters, they aren't just about basic survival. No, they're about those extreme, split-second decisions that completely defy logic. So we're going to chronologically trace 4 distinct leaps of faith across their journey. We'll break down the exact moments where characters have to push past absolute terror to achieve the impossible. Let's get into it. Wait a minute. I just lit a rocket. Rockets explode. Man, this quote perfectly captures the chaotic, split-second stakes we're looking at today. It immediately plunges us into a world where everyday toys are forced to make massive leaps of faith. Think about it. One moment you're celebrating a huge victory, thinking next stop, Andy. And then, literally the very next second, the terrifying reality of your own plan sets in. A rocket isn't just a simple mode of transportation, right? It's a literal countdown to destruction. This sudden realization of impending doom sets the absolute perfect stage for our analysis of how these characters manage to pivot from sheer panic to absolute bravery. First up, we have falling with style. Let's look at our first major set piece, taking place high above the neighborhood streets. What's really fascinating here is the contrast. On one hand, you've got the raw, unfiltered terror of missing the target. The rocket is lit, and the logical, completely understandable conclusion is simply, this is the part where we blow up. But then, the perspective shifts entirely. It's no longer about the impending explosion or even trying to fly. It is, famously, falling with style. They completely reframe their inevitable descent into a controlled, confident maneuver toward infinity and beyond, totally shifting the narrative of their own destruction. It's brilliant. Moving on to number 2, the airport rescue. The action quickly pivots from quiet neighborhood streets to a ticking clock rescue mission right out on a tarmac. The stakes escalate from a personal survival mission to a desperate, full-blown rescue operation. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer speed at which these characters have to strategize on the fly, literally, just to pull Jessie off the wrong flight before the luggage gets loaded. I mean, there is absolutely no time to sit down and draw up a blueprint. They discover Jessie in the car exactly where she was left, they immediately mount Bullseye to ride like the wind, and they physically boost each other up into the colossal belly of a commercial airplane. Oh, and they do all of this while dodging giant bags hurtling from the terminal. It's instantaneous teamwork, a total masterclass in rapid-fire problem-solving. So the really crucial point here is how they use their own fictional, canceled backstory to find the real-world courage to let go of a moving plane tire in what basically becomes Woody's finest hour. They are trapped, the plane is actively moving. Getting off seems like absolute sheer craziness. Woody tries his best to convince Jessie that Andy will love her, even throwing in Andy's little sister as a selling point. But to take that final leap off those spinning tires, they have to treat their terrifying reality like the unresolved cliffhanger of their old TV show. By just saying, let's find out together, they magically transform a terrifying, possibly fatal drop into a shared leap of faith. That brings us to our third scenario, the garbage truck threat. Now we transition from the sort of clean, mechanical danger of an airplane to the absolute, utter dread of the trash. I just love this part because the sheer panic of an approaching garbage truck completely strips away all that action hero bravery. It leaves Woody desperately trying to summon Buster the dog to the curb just to avoid being thrown away forever. You can practically hear the raw panic in their voices, saying things like, "This can't be happening," and "That's not trash." The sound of that garbage truck getting closer, it's literally a ticking clock of doom. The strategy here isn't flying or riding a trusty horse. It is a frantic, desperate attempt to call a dog. Think, think, think. It just goes to show that sometimes a leap of faith is really just scrambling for any lifeline you can find before the jaws of a literal trash compactor close in on you. Amidst all this frantic dodging of skunks and, literal trash, the narrative suddenly shifts to a breathless, rapid-fire reunion with Bo Peep and her sheep. Talk about giving you whiplash. You go from nearly being run over by a fast-driving skunkmobile to suddenly realizing exactly who is behind the wheel. The abrupt reintroduction of Billy, Goat, and Gruff halts that high-stakes action right in its tracks. Wait, you're a lost boy? That's awfully great that you are lost out here. This beautifully awkward exchange shows how a chaotic environment directly forces emotional honesty between characters who honestly never thought they'd see each other again. Right in the middle of this adrenaline-fueled escape, they have this incredibly vulnerable stumble over words. Think about it. To call someone a lost toy is usually the ultimate insult in this universe. But here, it's reframed as something awfully great because it means they're finally reunited. It takes a completely different kind of leap of faith to be this emotionally exposed in the middle of a literal survival situation. And finally, number 4, Duke Kaboom's big jump. This final leap relies entirely on an insecure stuntman somehow finding his courage. We are looking at a challenge that is purely physical, deeply psychological, and entirely necessary. Looking at the past versus the present, you can really see how Duke Kaboom has to overcome the deep trauma of a past failure to attempt a stunt 10 times longer than his last successful jump. The dialogue spells out the anxiety perfectly. The team desperately needs the fastest way to the carousel. But Duke, well, Duke is paralyzed by his past. He is literally known as the toy that went on to crash 40 feet into a target. He has firmly established a rule. Duke Kaboom would never repeat a stunt. To make this jump, he has to completely rewrite his own identity, going from a toy who crashes to a toy who succeeds. 40. 40 feet represents the seemingly insurmountable, totally terrifying scale of what these miniature toys are willing to attempt for the sake of teamwork. We hear it loud and clear in the dialogue. You made the last jump. Yeah, but that was 4 feet. This is 40. A 4-foot jump? Okay, that's manageable. But a 40-foot jump over a carousel is an absolute logic-defying chasm for a toy. It's the perfect representation of the massive gap between where you are and where you need to be, and the sheer unstoppable willpower required to cross it. 3, 2, 1. What is he doing? This is for you, Rashawn. Kaboom! With his eyes literally closed, Duke takes this massive, physical leap, serving as the ultimate climax to our breakdown of toys doing the impossible. When his friends realize he's attempting this incredibly dangerous stunt, completely blind, there is a moment of just pure shock. Like, what is he doing? But dedicating the jump to Rashawn, that gives him the emotional anchor he needs to fire off into the unknown. It is the absolute ultimate display of throwing logic completely out the window and trusting entirely in your own momentum. Ultimately, what this explainer reveals is that whether it's a lit rocket that's about to explode, a spinning jet plane tire on a runway, dodging a crushing garbage truck, or clearing a 40-foot chasm with your eyes squeezed shut, the real story is always about having the courage to take that impossible jump. These characters show us that the perfect plan, yeah, it rarely exists. Instead, you have to find your reason to jump, whether it's for a friend, for a long-lost reunion, or for Rishon. And then, you just have to fall with style. So it leaves us with this thought. When the gap looks too wide and the rocket is already lit, how will you reframe your panic into your finest hour?